Hello everyone, and welcome back to ASP.NET Core 1.0. My name is Steve Bishop, and in this video we're going to be talking about that delete action that I left you guys as homework in the last video. So I'm going to show you the code that I wrote for the delete action, but I also want to go over a potential error you may have encountered, especially if you were using the AdventureWorks database. You may have encountered an error that says the delete statement conflicted with the reference constraint fk_fact_internet_sales_dim customer. And this would have appeared as a DB update exception error, where it says an error occurred while updating the entries. See the inner exception for details, and here I'm highlighting those inner exception details. So what this is in reference to is the database has some constraints to ensure data integrity. When you try to delete a customer, there may be some records in other tables that point to that customer that you're trying to delete. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to solve this. The first way is doing it through the database itself, which I personally find to be a better solution because I think database integrity should be a function of the database, not up to the programmer. But I will also show you a way to get around it with programming. So if you don't have a DBA that wants to do this, maybe you don't even have a DBA and you'd rather handle it through code, you're going to see another way of handling this particular error. But you really should be having an internal discussion with all of the people who might be involved with this project to make sure that everyone agrees upon the route you should go in trying to maintain the data integrity of the database. So let's hop into Visual Studio and let's take a quick look at the code that I wrote for the delete action and start talking about some solutions for this particular exception error. So the solution I came up with for my delete customer action is to simply pass in as a parameter to the delete customer action an int of customer key, similar to how we passed one in for the get customer action. We're passing in that customer key. And now what I'm going to do is, with that key, I'm going to go find the customer that needs to be deleted from the system. And if there was in fact a customer found, that's this little check here to make sure that deleted customer is not null. And if it's not null, then that means it was found in the database. So let's go ahead and remove that found customer from the database. Then we're going to go ahead and save the changes to the database and return back to the index action. Now, as for where in the views we have a call to this delete customer, I went ahead and put it in the get customer view. And if we take a look at the get customer view, we have a save button here, and then next to the save button, I've added, using our tag helpers, a ASP action to delete customer, the controller is customers, and then I've added this ASP route where the customer key is the customer key from the model that's being passed into that get customer. Okay, so it is the dim customer there, and we're just setting the value of the customer key, ASP route customer key, we're setting that value to the customer key that comes from the model. So we have a link on our get customer page that if we click on it, it will call that delete customer action on our customer's controller and pass in that key. So that's how I went ahead and put our delete customer implementation on our customer's controller. Now, right now, if we try to run this and we go ahead and try to delete a customer, we'll see that we actually get that exception error. So I'll go to the customers, and of course we'll just get a list of all of the customers here. And if I scroll down to Marco Meta, I'm going to click on the view link. And if I want to delete Marco Meta, I just click on delete customer, and we should now get an error. So sure enough, we got the DB update exception was unhandled by user code. And if we expand out by looking at the details and then go into the inner exception, we'll see the delete statement conflicted with a reference constraint called FK Fact Internet Sales Dim Customer. Now, in the AdventureWorks database, we can find this constraint if we go to the dim customer table. So I'm going to right-click on dim customer, and this is the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. And I like to use the SQL Server Management Studio because it makes it a lot easier to look for certain things and create tables and create queries out on your own if you're really working as kind of a DBA or working with the database directly. So if you have control of your database directly and you're responsible for it, I highly recommend you use Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio to do some of these more intricate, detailed tasks and not rely so heavily on the SQL Server Object Explorer. You're welcome to. You can do pretty much everything in SQL Server Object Explorer, but you just have to be a bit more savvy about what you're doing in order to get to some of these other detailed type of things like these relationships and constraints. So inside of SQL Server Management Studio, I'm going to right-click in this open area here next to Dim Customer Table Design View, and I'm going to open up the relationships for this dim customer table. Now here we see that there are 3 different constraints on this table. There's a FK dim customer dim geography. There's the FK fact internet sales underscore dim customer, and that matches the error that we had here, FK fact internet sales dim customer. So that's the one there that's causing the problem. And then we also have this third constraint called FK fact survey response customer key. Now let's take a look at the first one here, and this is not giving us an error at this time, but if we just look at it to explore it, I'm going to expand out this tables in specific column, or the tables and column specification area here, and we can see that there is a foreign key to primary key relationship established with this particular constraint. And it's saying that the dim customer table has a foreign key in it, and the foreign key column is called geography key. Now that geography key is pointing to the primary table of dim geography, and the primary key column on that dim geography table is called geography key. So the dim customer table has a foreign key that points to the dim geography table. Now if you think about this for just a moment, what happens if you delete a customer record from the dim customer table? Would that have an adverse effect on the dim geography table in this relationship scenario? And the answer is no, because the primary table that contains all of the important data is the dim geography table. And if a customer gets removed, it won't change the status of any of the data inside the dim geography table. So now let's take a look at the constraint that is causing a problem. And if we open up and expand the tables and columns specification here, we'll see that the relationship is in the reverse. Now, the fact internet sales table has a foreign key that points to the dim customer table. So if you were to take out a dim customer record, there may be one or many fact internet sales records that have some sort of foreign key pointing to the record you're removing. And that would cause a problem. You would have what is called orphaned records. You would have records in the fact internet sales table that are pointing to a customer that has been deleted. So in order to maintain this integrity of the database, you can see that we have this enforce foreign key constraint is turned on. This is a way for Microsoft to say, or your databases in general, to say, I must maintain some integrity between the foreign key and my primary table. Now, if we also expand out this insert and update specification section here, we'll find that there are a couple of rules that we can actually have some change of settings on. And these act whenever we try to delete one of the records from the primary table. We can see delete rule. So what happens if we delete a record from the customer table? Well, right now it's set to no action. And the same thing for the update rule. If we updated the primary key on a customer, what would happen to the the foreign keys on all of the other tables, or more specifically, what would happen to the foreign key on the fact internet sales table? Well, the thing is nothing is happening. There is no action. So we're trying to maintain the integrity of the foreign key relationship, but if someone tries to delete a record from the dim customer table, there's no special action to circumvent the problem. And that is why we have an error when we try to delete a customer, and there are records that exist inside of the fact internet sales table that point to the customer that we're trying to delete. So to solve this, and this is the way I prefer to solve it, is to just change these rules from no action to, in my case, I'm going to pick cascade. And the cascade means propagate the changes to the other tables in the database. So if I delete a customer from my dim customers table, all of the relevant records in the fact internet sales table should also be deleted. Now, if that's not appealing to you, if you don't want to delete those records in the fact internet sales, there's a couple of other options you can pick from. You can set the value of the foreign key to null. So the fact internet sales record would still be there, but now the foreign key that points to the dim customer would be changed to just a null value. The other option is to change it to the default value of the column. So if it is an int, so if the foreign key column on fact internet sales table is of a type int, it would change it to the default, which is 0. Now that may be different if you can actually change that particular setting on tables where you have a different default than perhaps the default value of the data type. But the point is that if you set it to default, then that means whatever the default value is of that column in fact internet sales, that's what it would get set to. Now again, I prefer cascading these changes because honestly, if I'm deleting a customer, I'm going to also need to delete their internet sales. At least for me, that's what I'm going to do in this particular case. Again, you should be having these discussions internally with the people you're working with and the people in charge of your database to make sure that you are setting these rules appropriately for the way that your business is constructed. So we fixed the problem with the fact internet sales dim customer constraint. Let's take a look at this last constraint here, the FK underscore fact survey response underscore customer key. And I just want you to think for a moment before I go through this. What was the determining factor in whether or not we needed to change the delete rule and update rule? Why did we need to make that change? Well, if you go back up to the tables and customers specification, where we're looking at how the two tables are linked, we'll see that the fact survey response table has a foreign key that points to the dim customer table. So if we deleted a customer from the dim customer table, would it adversely affect the records in the fact survey response? Would we be creating orphaned records in the fact survey response table? And the answer is yes, we would. So if we're going to be leaving orphaned records, we need to do something about that before it becomes a problem and our data integrity is compromised. So I'm going to change both the delete rule again to cascade and the update rule to cascade. So now that we've made those appropriate changes, I'm going to close out and save our changes to our database so that now those constraints have been resolved. And let's go ahead and run our application one more time. I'm going to need to exit out of our current status here and rerun our website. Now we'll go to the customers. And of course, the default is the index action, which gives us the list of customers. And we can see there's Marco Meta still in our database. So when we tried to delete it, it was unsuccessful. So let's go ahead and view Marco Meta here. And now let's try deleting Marco Meta from the database. So delete customer. And we got the same error again. Let's take a look at the details of the error this time. Well, the delete statement conflicted with the reference constraint FK fact internet sales reason underscore fact internet sales. So this is a different constraint this time. This is a different problem than we had the last time. So we're going to look at the fact internet sales reason table and see if we can find this link here. Or we could even look at the fact internet sales table and look there to see what this constraint is doing. So I'm going to go back into our database here in SQL Server Management Studio, and I'm going to look up fact internet sales table, and I'm going to go to the design view, and I'm going to right click on the white space area over here and click on relationships. And the one I'm looking for, I see a bunch of fact internet sales to dim currency, and I could probably go ahead and look through each one of those, but I've already done so. So I know that none of these constraints are the type of constraint that worry us about orphaned records. The only one that we do care about is this last one here, and it's the one that's giving us errors, right? The FK fact internet sales reason underscore fact internet sales. We can see FK fact internet sales reason fact internet sales. So this is the constraint that we're having problems with. And if we look again at the tables and column specification, we see there it is. Fact internet sales reason points to the fact internet sales. So when we tried to delete, back when we did our original constraint, let me just reopen up our customer table again here. When we tried to delete from the fact internet sales table, right, when we did a cascade delete, right, we deleted records from the fact internet sales table if we also deleted from the dim customer table. That means that we are trying to delete records from the fact internet sales table, and it also has similar constraints on it. And it says if you're going to delete something from this fact internet sales table, here is another constraint that kind of has a problem if we try to just delete a record from here. It's going to orphan the records that are in that fact internet sales reason table. So we need to once again resolve this, and we're going to change once again the insert and update specifications to cascade. Now that should hopefully be the last of it, but I just kind of want to show you guys, if we open up that next table, the fact internet sales reason table, the one that could potentially have records being deleted from it, and we'll go into the relationships here, we'll see that none of these relationships are dependent or being depended upon. None of these records in the fact internet sales reason table are being depended upon by some other table. Instead, the fact internet sales reason table depends upon a record in the dim sales reason, and same thing for this constraint where it says that the fact internet sales reason table is dependent upon records in the fact internet sales table. So then that's obviously the one that we were just modifying, right? And we can see the changes that we just made where we changed the delete rule and the update rule. So it's just important to just kind of follow the thread to make sure that when you delete a record from one table and it's doing a cascade delete to another table, you should check the constraints on those other tables where you might be deleting records to make sure everything is lined up to work properly. So now let's go ahead and try this hopefully one more time. I'm going to go ahead and stop our application from running and restart it. And now we'll go to the customers list. And we'll scroll down here to Marco Mehta. We'll view his profile and we'll delete the customer. And this time we get redirected back to our list of customers, and we'll see that Marco is no longer here. He was below Julio Ruiz. So Marco has been deleted from the database. We no longer have any errors, and it was simply just a function of the cascading, doing a cascade delete or cascade update when we made changes to the dim customer records. So that is how you solve it through databases. But I also want to show you a way that you can do it through code in case you are not allowed to do it in the database. In case maybe your DBA doesn't want to do it this particular way, and I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm sure that they are probably just as concerned about database integrity as I am. But not all companies want to work the same way. So we need to have an alternative solution in case whoever's managing the data does not want to do this cascade action or set the value to null or default. So we'll go ahead and save that and close out of those changes. And then I also need to change on the internet sales table. So we'll go back into here. I'm just setting all of these relationships back to the way they were before we made our changes. No action, no action. And now we have problems again if we tried to delete a customer. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to handle the problem in code. Now the problem is that there are records in those other tables that refer back to that customer we're trying to delete. So the solution is delete those records before you delete the customer. So how do you find out what those records are before you delete them? Well, what you're going to want to do is on our deleted customer variable here, you're going to go ahead and use the include, there we go, include, and we can include one of the properties, and this is where we're going to look for the navigation property that points to the table that has those has that relationship with our table. Oops, I opened the wrong one. So I'm just going to go back to our dim customer table real quick here and look at the relationship. And it was that fact internet sales table. And we have the relationship here where fact internet sales is looking at dim customer. So there's a navigation property in our context that goes from dim customer to that fact internet sales table. And so if we do I, and I'm just going to use I as my lambda expression, and include does take a lambda expression that points to the property on the dim customer objects, and that property then is going to be I fact internet sales. Now that will get us to one layer deep, right? So we'll get all of the fact internet sales records that are associated with that dim customer that we find. But we also need to remember we had a second layer when we tried to delete that fact internet sales. We had a second layer in that fact internet sales reason table. So we need to also delete those. So we'll do and then we'll do then include. So you just have to make sure you do this. Include, then include, and then include goes off of the results from the include. And it's going to look at all of the fact internet sales records on the dim customer. I'm just going to use I again here. We're looking for fact internet sales reasons. Now don't forget we also had another constraint on the dim customer table. So if we go back to the relationships, we had the fact survey response constraint. So we need to resolve for that as well, which means we need to bring in another include. But we need to make sure that the order of includes is proper here, because if we tried to do it afterwards, if we tried to do another include here, then this then include would not work. It'd be pulling off the wrong records. So we need to make sure we put this include in the right location. I'm going to put it in front of the fact internet sales. So do include I. And what was the name of that table again? Just want to check it out. It's fact survey response. So we're going to do I fact survey response. So that'll bring in all the fact survey responses, bring in all the fact internet sales responses, and then on each one of those fact internet sales responses that are associated with the customer, it will then get all the fact internet sales reasons that are associated with the fact internet sales. So we have to bring in all that data that's associated with that customer so that we can eventually delete the customer. Now from there, once we know that we have a deleted customer and we were able to find a record, I'm going to go ahead and do a for each loop for each one of these includes. So for each, I'm just going to make this fact survey response in the deleted customer fact survey response. So we have that fact internet survey response that we're including. So for each one of them in that collection, I'm going to need to delete it. So I'm going to do db remove, and we're going to say fact survey response. Then after each fact survey response has been removed, I'm going to do another for each, and I'm going to do a fact internet sale, and that comes from the deleted customer fact internet sales collection. And for each, we're going to need to do another db remove fact internet sales, or fact internet sale. So that's each one of the internet sales that we have inside of the collection. We need to remove it from the database. But actually, we might run into a problem if we try to do that, right? Because that fact internet sales has a then include on it. Oh, looks like my antivirus is out of date. Sorry about that. So for each one of my fact internet sales that I'm going to delete, I also have the fact internet sales reasons. And if I tried to remove the fact internet sale before I remove all of the reasons associated with that sale, I might run into a problem. So for each fact internet sale, I actually need to do a for each inside of it that is going to look for all of the fact internet sales reason in the fact internet sale dot fact internet sales reason. So now we can do a db remove of the fact internet sale, actually fact internet sales reason. There we go. So we have quite a bit of code here that we're having to do to try to handle this particular problem. And you'll notice that right now I'm leaving off the save changes until after all of these removes have been performed, and then I delete the customer, and then I save those changes to the database. So let's just see how this works now. I've got all these for each loops in place to delete all those records that are associated with the customer before then finally deleting the customer. So let's run this and see how it goes. So let's go to our customers section, and I'm going to pick on Rob Verhoff here. So I'm going to view Rob Verhoff, and we'll try delete customer, and cross your fingers, hopefully everything works. And it sure does. So we're back to our list, and Rob Verhoff has been removed. So there you go. There is a way to do it. If you do all of these includes to get all of the records on those that are your navigation properties of the DIM customer for both the fact survey response and the fact internet sales. And then we had to dig another level deep on the fact internet sales and remove all the fact internet sales reasons before we could finally then go ahead and remove the customer altogether. And that way we didn't have to change any of the foreign key relationships, or any of this the foreign key relationships or the constraints at all in our database. We were able to leave the database alone and still in code make the appropriate changes to go ahead and remove the customer. So there you guys go. I hope that you have learned something. I know this might have been a pretty difficult error for a lot of you guys to overcome. Again, I do prefer the database solution. I prefer that any sort of database integrity should be handled by the database itself, not be left up to the coders, because who knows where it might go wrong. And if something were to change in the database, then perhaps the coders may not know it, and then you could have potential problems. So I would not leave that up to the code to maintain that
As
database
a gift
integrity.
to all the people who watched this video all the way through, enjoy the following clip.
Okay, so Batman's pole vault over a bull. Oh my god, he pole vaults. Oh my god, the bull did not like that, did he? Anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe to my channel so you can get notifications about future videos. And I hope to see you guys at the next video. Until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.